Paul Ryan, you're a piece of garbage. You're a piece of garbage, and we should kick you out of the party. For Paul Ryan to say he's not voting for Donald Trump, that's the problem with some of our Republicans. It's guys like that. Don't go spouting your mouth off and saying you're a conservative. You're spitting in the face of the leader of our party, Donald Trump. I mean, grow up a little bit.
Well, it's a day that ends with a Y. That means you have MAGA Republicans attacking other Republicans who aren't as culty MAGA as the MAGA Republicans. There you have MAGA Republican Troy Nehls going after former Republican Speaker of the House Paul Ryan because Paul Ryan said, look, I can't support Donald Trump or anyone who wants to terminate the Constitution. For the current MAGA Republicans in the House of Representatives, though, that makes you not conservative anymore. No, that makes you MAGA Republicans not conservative. Then Democrats went on the offense on the House floor. Democratic Congress member Eric Swalwell says, look, the Democrats are working for the people. MAGA Republicans are working for a convicted felon. Play the clip.
This is not about the contempt of the Attorney General. It's about MAGA Republicans' contempt for the Constitution, the rule of law, and democracy. And it's about who any of us came here to fight for. MAGA Republicans are fighting for one person at the cost of what your constituents actually care about. You're fighting for a felon. You're fighting for a felon. On this side, we're fighting for working people. We're fighting for the kids and the teachers and the soldiers and the cops and the firefighters and the bakers and the butchers. People who go to work every day and count on us to do something for them. And you're working for a felon. A felon. 12 of his neighbors, people in the community where he committed crimes, made 34 decisions. And 408 straight times, they said guilty. So let me make it clear where we stand. We will choose families over felons, verdicts over vengeance, and people over politics.
Next up, you have Democratic Congress member Adam Schiff, who says, just think about that sight of the MAGA Republicans being dressed up by Donald Trump in long red ties to stand in front of his criminal trial, where, by the way, he was convicted, and watching each of these MAGA Republicans denigrate the rule of law. Play the clip.
Contempt. To hold something as beneath the dignity of consideration, something to be scorned, an attitude towards something that is inferior, worthless, open disrespect for something that is vile, despised, disgraced, insolence in the presence of the law. An apt description not of the subject of this motion, but of those who bring it. Not of an Attorney General who has upheld our justice system, who has demonstrated a respect for our institutions, but of those who mock the idea that we are a nation of laws, not the individual. When Republicans line up in front of a Manhattan courthouse to denigrate the rule of law in the service of a now convicted felon, that is contemptuous. When Republicans peddle the lie that Joe Biden is pulling the levers of Trump's Manhattan prosecution, that is contemptuous. When Republican committee chairmen ignore their own subpoena but feign indignation when the Attorney General complies with his, that is contemptuous. That is deserving of our scorn. That is beneath the dignity of this body. That is vile, disgraceful, and worthy. I have additional 30 seconds. That is deserving of our scorn. That is beneath the dignity of this body. That is vile, disgraceful, and worthy of derision. Those who bring this motion bring contempt, all right, but only upon themselves. I yield back.
Back to Congress member Eric Swalwell says, you want to talk about subpoenas for a moment? On the one hand, you have the Biden administration complying with subpoenas. On the other hand, what about MAGA Republicans like Jim Jordan? Here, play the clip.
An additional minute.
And can we also just talk about subpoenas for 1 second? Because 2 of your last speakers are 750 plus days in defiance of a subpoena. So get real when Mr. Jordan and Mr. Biggs come to this floor and want to talk and get all righteous about subpoenas. You start honoring your subpoenas, and we can talk about anyone else's subpoena. And I yield back.
Next up, you have Democratic Congress member Jamie Raskin, who says, It's rich beyond measure that the MAGA Republicans are now spending taxpayer time, and what they're focused on now is trying to hold Merrick Garland in contempt. Seriously? Here, play this clip.
And it's rich beyond measure, like a billionaire rich, to be asked to hold the Attorney General in contempt by people who themselves received subpoenas to testify before the January 6th committee, who never rendered a single document nor a single minute of testimony to the January 6th committee. I urge Congress to reject this absurd motion, and I'm happy to yield back to the chairman.
The chair would remind members to refrain from engaging in personalities toward presumptive nominees for the office of president. Recognize the gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I never said I wouldn't testify in front of the January 6th committee. I just want to know what the parameters that testimony were going to be. So I never did say no to that. Second,
And Democratic Congressmember Jamie Raskin was on fire, saying, look, rather than admit defeat in this bumbling operation, this is what these MAGA Republicans are doing now. Here, play the clip.
Rather than admit defeat in this bumbling operation and look for some other way to actually aid the public good, they've decided to flail about in mock outrage against a series of phantom tyrants in the hopes of distracting everyone from this epic flop. Their first distraction was to impeach Secretary Ali Mayorkas as a paltry consolation prize, but that pathetic decoy action blew up in their hands. Then the plan was to skip the mundane work of casting votes and actually doing committee business to travel on a collective spiritual pilgrimage on Amtrak to New York City to attend the criminal trial of an unmentionable American felon, one of 19 million in the country. But that strange journey to Mecca also blew up in their faces when this mystery political false prophet was convicted unanimously by a jury of his peers on dozens of felony criminal counts in a fair American trial. They tried to salvage the credibility of this bizarre expedition by blaming the American justice system for being weaponized against Republicans. But this political extremism quickly melted away when the son of President Biden, the original target of their wrath, was also prosecuted and convicted, like another disarmed felon whose name may now not be spoken on the floor, apparently, by a unanimous jury of his peers on all counts against him. And that trial, unlike the trial whose very existence must be sent down the Orwellian memory hole to save someone hurt feelings, was actually tried in the federal system. So what's left to do now? Well, let's hold the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, in contempt, of course. This will be sure to placate an unrepentant and anonymous convicted felon from New York and distract everybody else for a day or two. I confess it's a bit rich, Mr. Speaker, to be asked to hold the Attorney General of the United States in contempt of Congress for overwhelmingly complying with the committee's demands by members who voted against contempt citations for Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, two persons subpoenaed by the January 6th Select Committee who never spent a single minute. Could I have one more?
The gentleman's time has expired.
I grant the gentleman an additional minute.
Bannon and Navarro never spent a minute with the January 6th committee, never turned over a single document to our committee. These people had 0% compliance with Congress. They demonstrated true contempt, which is why they've been sentenced to jail. But Chairman Comer, in his wisdom, would hold the Attorney General of the United States of America in contempt for what I think is 100% compliance, but in any event is something like 98 or 99% compliance. If you think a federal official has not rendered proper compliance, you take them to court, you don't hold them in contempt, and it's rich beyond measure, like a billionaire rich, to be asked to hold the Attorney General in contempt by people who themselves received subpoenas to testify before the January 6th committee, who never rendered a single document nor a single minute of testimony to the January 6th committee. I urge Congress to reject this absurd motion, and I'm happy to yield back to the chairman.
Congressmember Raskin was not done talking more about the Republicans' failed impeachment probe. Play the clip.
Holding the Attorney General of the United States in contempt is one more useful distraction from the complete and devastating implosion of the Biden impeachment probe, which of course was the #1 priority of these talented leaders. Remember, they promised to reveal the greatest presidential high crime and misdemeanor in American history, an act of treachery and deceit that dwarfs even the incitement of a violent mob insurrection and an attempted political coup that took place right here against our Constitution, our Congress, our Vice President in this chamber. But after their truly prodigious investigation, punctuated, admittedly, by some unfortunate mishaps like Chinese spies, fake evidence, pornographic displays in committee, and their own witnesses testifying that there were no grounds for presidential impeachment, they have nothing to show for their arduous work other than one more debunked Russian disinformation operation and one more indicted GOP informant and star witness.
And then he goes, the MAGA Democratic Congress member, J.B. Raskin, goes, they don't even know what they are looking for. Here, play the clip.
And why is that important? Well, in case you've lost the thread of this madcap wild goose chase, America, remember this is an impeachment investigation. Do they think that the holy grail of the 118th Congress, evidence of a presidential high crime and misdemeanor, is lurking in the pauses or the background throat clearings and sneezes on the audio tape? Well, of course not. They know there's no high crime or misdemeanor to be found because they've spent the last 17 months and millions of our taxpayer dollars looking for it, and it simply does not exist. They literally don't even know what they're looking for anymore. So why do they want it? Well, they're hoping that in the 5 hours of President Biden's testimony, they can find a mispronounced word or phrase or a brief stammer, which they can then turn into an embarrassing political TV attack ad. Get it, America? That's what this is all about. And
speaking about they don't know what they are looking for, then you had MAGA Republican Speaker of the House, MAGA Mike Johnson, held a press conference. And one of the reporters said, look, so Trump is coming to D.C. He's going to be speaking with the Senate and he's speaking with the House. Like, have you spoken to him about not leading another insurrection? Have you had those conversations? Here, play this clip.
Back to former President Trump and with his arrival here, near the Capitol, really for the first time, Republicans are both the House and Senate meeting with him since the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Are you committed or have you spoken to him about basically not doing anything like that again and committing to respecting the sort of American tradition of a peaceful transfer of presidency?
Of course he respects that, and we all do, and we've all talked about it ad nauseum. We're excited to welcome President Trump back. He'll be meeting with the Senate Republicans, of course, after he has a breakfast with us. And there's high anticipation here and great excitement. And I feel, look, we feel that, as I've mentioned, I've been all across the country, crisscrossing the country in all the districts of all these campaigns, and there's a real energy in the base right now and a real energy among the American people. They know that change is coming. It can't get here soon enough. November cannot get here soon enough. But we're anxious to talk about that and I guess bounce around ideas with the president tomorrow. Looking forward to welcoming him right after the congressional baseball game. And it's a big week here and lots of good feeling. So with that, we'll leave you all. Thanks so much for being here.
And then MAGA Mike Johnson is asked about, wait a minute, so you're trying to hold Merrick Garland in contempt, who actually did comply, and he showed up and he testified. He testified last week. Remember, we did videos on that on the MeidasTouch network. But what about Jim Jordan? And then, look, MAGA Mike Johnson will just say whatever. I mean, he's Donald Trump's little whatever. Play this clip.
Mr. Speaker, you and Leader Scalise talked about the importance of Merrick Garland complying with a congressional subpoena. I'm curious, since Chairman Jordan and 4 other colleagues declined to do that under the January 6th committee, if you worry that undermines the argument at all?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up the January 6th committee. We'll be talking a lot more about that in the coming weeks. There's been a lot of investigation about that committee. I don't think it was properly constituted. I don't think it was properly administered, and now we know that apparently some of the evidence was hidden and some maybe even destroyed. So you'll hear much more about that in the days ahead. You talk about apples to oranges. There couldn't be a more clear contrast between that and what we're talking about here. This is the Judiciary Committee. This is the Weaponization Committee. These are properly constituted and operating committees under Chairman Jordan's leadership. Have done extraordinary work. methodically, constitutionally, appropriately, and now we come to this impasse with the Attorney General himself who refuses to comply. Look, this is an Article 1 issue. We've got to get it covered well, and I think we will, and I think that's why this contempt will pass on the floor. So
then we got AOC, Democrat, responding to the Republicans trying to say, oh, there's a two-tiered justice system, and look, the Hunter Biden conviction was just a smokescreen for a bigger operation. Here's what AOC has to say. Play the clip.
What would Republicans point to as a two-tiered system of justice when the president's son was just convicted of a crime? I mean, if anything, this shows the difference that Democrats are willing to accept when our justice system works as functions and as designed. We're not here contesting the results. We're not here trying to defund the FBI or the Department of Justice because we don't like the outcome of a given trial. We respect the judicial process.
Then we have Democratic Congressmember Jamie Raskin and AOC talking about the stark contrast between President Biden and Donald Trump. Here, play this clip.
And they're so eager to be servile sycophants to Donald Trump that their political judgment is off, because that's not where the public is. And the public understands with the Hunter Biden verdict and the Donald Trump verdict, the rule of law is just working. And they're intervening, as you say, in a state case in order simply to placate Donald Trump.
Precisely. And what we're also seeing here is the stark contrast between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And in President Biden, we have both, yes, a loving father who is there to be supportive of his son, but also a president who respects rule of law and is willing to accept the outcomes of a case, even if that outcome is not in favor with his family or his personal, outcomes. Whereas you have Donald Trump, who takes and weaponizes the seats of government, the seats of power, and embarks on a campaign of political intimidation in order to wrest and secure outcomes that personally benefit him. And that, at the core, is part of the stakes of our democracy that are before us today. Because once rule of law goes out the window, it is not something that is easy to get back. And it is very much a part of the decision that we have to make before us in the next few months.
And just so you can see, I showed you the beginning of the clip, what MAGA Republican Troy Nehls was saying when he attacked Paul Ryan. Let me just show you what he was responding to that Paul Ryan said. Here, play the clip.
Voted for him in 2016, hoping that there was going to be a different kind of person in office. And I do think character is a really important issue. If you put yourself above the Constitution, as he has done.
But what happened?
I think that makes you unfit for office.
Was the whole January 6th thing?
That's a part of it. I think it's a contribution of factors, but I think it really is just character at the end of the day. And the fact that if you're willing to put yourself above the Constitution, an oath you swear when you take office, in federal office, whether it's president or a member of Congress, you swear an oath to the Constitution. And if you're willing to suborn it to yourself, I think that makes you unfit for office.
Does it?
Yeah, and what Paul Ryan said is not too dissimilar to what former Trump top White House aide Sarah Matthews just said on CNN. Here's what she had to say. Play the clip.
I have said publicly that if my choices in November are Joe Biden and Donald Trump, that I will have no choice but to vote for Joe Biden. I don't really necessarily view it as a vote for Joe Biden, but more so a vote against Trump. I just can't, in good faith, vote for someone who has shown us that he will not uphold the Constitution and who to this day will not admit that he lost the 2020 election and was the first president to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. And so I would encourage other Americans to follow suit. I know right now, I think there are a lot of people like myself, whether that be moderate Republicans or independents, who are hugely disappointed with their options in 2024. And I empathize with that. But at the end of the day, I can put policy aside and know that Joe Biden is a person of good character and who will be a good leader for us, whereas Donald Trump has shown us what kind of leader he was at the end of his first administration.
Well, look, if
Yeah, and while that's all happening, what are they talking about on Fox? Here's what they're talking about on Fox. I don't even know what they're even trying to say here. I don't even know what this means or what they're mad about. They're mad about something right now. Here, play this clip.
And I got to tell you, if they become the majority, we're in trouble. I mean, do you want people whose motto is, and they took this right out of the 50s and 60s, battle by day, love at night, which needs birth control and dental dams and food. Remember the...
And then apparently Kayleigh McEnany says that Donald Trump should be asking voters if they want to go to a dance party. Here, play this clip.
How does that work? Do you want a dance party or do you want to go live in your parents' basement? Like, finesse the language, but home ownership, the American dream, that's what these young people want more than a free beer.
But here's what I do know, folks. Take a look at the headlines over the past day or two. Just the headlines so far. U.S. hiring and wage growth picked up last month in a sign of sustained economic health. America's employers added a strong 272,000 jobs in May, accelerating from April, and a sign that companies are still confident enough in the economy to keep hiring despite persistently higher interest rates. Inflation eased in May, improving the odds of a 2024 rate cut. Core prices that exclude volatile food and energy items posted their smallest year over year since 2021. So that's the Wall Street Journal. The first was the AP. Next, surprising U.S. economy is powering a better global outlook. World Bank says high interest rates and trade tensions pose risks to a newly upbeat forecast, though. And then Americans have more investment income than ever before. A booming economy and rising household wealth help some consumers keep spending. Well, there you have it. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 3 million subscribers together. That's Chiquito back there. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.
First, it was Convict 45. Now it's Convict 45. Get your gear right now at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.